Dajjal, Tamim, al-Dari, and the problem of preservation. Today I want to explore one of the most fascinating subjects in Islamic tradition, the Dajjal. At first glance, this appears to be a discussion about an end times figure. But the deeper I investigated the topic, the more I became convinced that the real issue is not the Dajjal himself. The real issue is preservation. If Muslims disagree about how authentic narrations should be understood, how can they know with certainty what Muhammad intended them to believe? To answer that question, we need to examine the evidence step by step. Who is the Dajjal? The Dajjal occupies a central place in Islamic eschatology. He is often described as the greatest trial humanity will face before the Day of Judgment. Numerous Hadith warn believers about him. Some narrations claim every prophet warned his people about the Dajjal. Traditional descriptions portray him as a one-eyed deceiver who will perform extraordinary feats and lead many people astray. These reports became deeply embedded within mainstream Sunni belief. But there is a problem. When we examine the narrations carefully, we discover that the story is more complicated than many Muslims realize. One of the most intriguing figures connected to the Dajjal tradition is Ibn Sayyad. Several early reports indicate that some companions suspected Ibn Sayyad might actually be the Dajjal. Umar ibn al-Khattab reportedly suspected him. Muhammad questioned him directly. The conversations are strange and unsettling. What makes these reports fascinating is that they suggest uncertainty. Rather than speaking about the Dajjal purely as a distant future figure, some early Muslims wondered whether he was already present among them. This raises an important question. Why would Muhammad investigate Ibn Sayyad if the Dajjal's identity was already fully understood? The reports suggest that early expectations regarding the Dajjal may have been more fluid than later believers often assume. The most famous Dajjal narration comes from Tamim al-Dari and is found in Sahih Muslim. According to the report, Tamim and a group of sailors became lost at sea. They landed on a mysterious island and encountered a strange creature known as al-Jassasa. The creature directed them to a building where they found a massive man bound in chains. The chained figure questioned them about current events and signs. He eventually identified himself as the Dajjal. For modern listeners, the story sounds almost mythical. A mysterious island, a strange beast, a chained apocalyptic figure awaiting release. Yet the most important detail comes afterward. According to the narration, Muhammad gathered the people and publicly stated that Tamim's story agreed with what he had already been teaching regarding the Dajjal. This is the single most important fact in the entire discussion. Muhammad did not merely relay a story he had heard. According to the narration, he endorsed it. He presented it as confirmation of his own teaching. That means the historical question is not simply whether Tamim believed the story. The historical question becomes, why did Muhammad find the story convincing? This fact transforms the narration from an isolated tale into something much more significant. When historians study religious traditions, they often ask whether similar ideas existed beforehand. Long before Islam, Jewish and Christian communities possessed apocalyptic traditions involving end-times deceivers, imprisoned peoples, hidden barriers, and cosmic conflicts near the end of history. The Gog and Magog traditions provide one example. Various late antique traditions also discuss powerful adversaries who would emerge near the end of time. Whether these parallels represent direct borrowing, shared cultural influences, or independent developments remains debated. However, they demonstrate that Muhammad lived within a broader world already saturated with apocalyptic expectations. For centuries, many Muslims accepted these narrations without difficulty. The modern world changed the conversation. Today, people immediately think of satellites, aviation, global exploration, oceanography, and detailed maps. The idea of an unknown island containing a chained man who has remained alive for more than 14 centuries appears difficult for many people to reconcile with modern knowledge. This tension explains why some contemporary scholars have revisited the issue. Eschatology has discussed the Tamim al-Dari narration and related questions in public lectures. What makes his discussion interesting is that he highlights tensions surrounding interpretation and historical understanding. The discussion is not always about rejecting the narration outright. Rather, it often concerns how such reports should be understood and how certainty should be established. This represents a broader phenomenon within modern Islam. As knowledge expands and new questions arise, scholars revisit difficult texts and attempt to reconcile them with other evidence. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in the entire discussion, matan criticism. Many Muslims are familiar with chain criticism. Scholars examine transmitters and chains of narration to determine authenticity. Matan criticism focuses on the content of the report itself. The Dajjal narration raises a fascinating question. If a report possesses a strong narration but appears difficult to reconcile with reason, observation, or other evidence, what should scholars do? Accept it literally? Reinterpret it? Question aspects of it? The existence of these debates demonstrates that Hadith interpretation involves more than simply verifying chains. The problem of preservation. This is where the investigation reaches its deepest point. Suppose two scholars agree that a narration is authentic. One interprets it literally. The other interprets it symbolically or questions aspects of it. At that moment, a new question emerges. What exactly has been preserved? The wording? The meaning? Both? If scholars disagree about what Muhammad intended, how does an ordinary Muslim determine which interpretation reflects Allah's guidance? This question extends far beyond the Dajjal. It affects every discussion involving difficult hadith. I began this investigation expecting to learn about a mysterious island and a chained apocalyptic figure. Instead, I found myself thinking about preservation, certainty, and interpretation. The most fascinating part of the Dajjal story is not the island itself. It's the fact that Muhammad reportedly endorsed the story as confirmation of his own teachings. And once scholars begin debating how such narration should be understood, a much larger question emerges. If an authentic narration can become the subject of reinterpretation, disagreement, and criticism, how certain can believers be that they know exactly what Muhammad intended them to believe? Perhaps the most interesting question is not where the Dajjal is. Perhaps the most interesting question is what it means for a religion to claim preservation.